Hands up, don't shoot. This is a slogan in our country that most people should be able to recognize. Black Lives Matter is a current progressive movement that is being used to call attention to the injustices faced by African Americans in this country at the hands of those sworn to protect us, the police. Today we will discuss the origin of this movement, why the response All Lives Matter is misleading, and how protesting has worked and continues to work to bring change to our nation today. Now, according to the academic journal, The Civil Rights Movement to Black Lives Matter, the African Union, and the African Americans in the United States, the Black Lives Matter movement was co-founded by 3 African American women by the name of Patrisse Cullors, Opal Tometi, and Alicia Garza in 2012 in response to the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the case in which he was tried for murdering a 17-year-old African American teenager by the name of Trayvon Martin. Now, the movement went on to gain national or international recognition after the death of Michael Brown in 2014, which is where the slogan "Hands Up, Don't Shoot" originated from. Now, with every movement comes a counter movement, and for Black Lives Matter, that came in the form of All Lives Matter. Now, according to Scott Loken in his academic journal, Black Lives Matter Movement and Why the Response All Lives Matter is Misleading, Black Lives Matter is a statement that is basically just trying to remind those who may have forgotten that Black lives are supposed to be considered as equal in this nation. Now, the response of All Lives Matter to this is as if people want to brush off the concerns of Black people against the unjust police brutality cases that go unpunished, which allows for these incidents to keep happening with no fear of prosecution. I've met many people in my life who have argued for All Lives Matter, but their point is highly misleading, as Black Lives Matter never stood for all lives not mattering. It is just being used to emphasize that Black lives matter in life and in death, and they deserve justice as well. And that is why the phrase "all lives can't matter until Black lives do too" was adopted as well. Now, protesting has worked and continues to work throughout our nation to bring change to our policies and to our laws. And that has been shown throughout the years, even dating all the way back to the Boston Tea Party. Now, Marco de la Casa, who is a USA Today reporter, has cited many cases in which protesting has actually helped our nation bring about positive change to its laws, starting even in 1954, where the Supreme Court had decided to rule for desegregating the schools, which came after protests. In 1955 as well, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus for a white woman, which was against the law at the time, and she was arrested, which made Martin Luther King Jr. Hold bus boycotts. And those bus boycotts eventually led to a year later, the busing system ended up being desegregated as well. Now, in 2020, protests have incited across the nation in hopes of getting justice for George Floyd, who was an African American man who was killed in a case of police brutality a couple weeks ago. And now, after all the protests that have been going on, we finally have gotten a little slice of justice, a little start, with all 4 officers who were involved in the case being indicted on charges of murder. And this is just only the beginning for the Black Lives Matter movement. So the one thing that many people need to recognize still is that persistence is key, and protesting does work. Now, like I said, persistence really is key, especially for the Black Lives Matter movement, where this has been a movement that started in 2012, and every few years it kind of sparks up and then it dies back down. And right now it is showing that it is a very, very good time for this movement to come forward and finally take its place in the forefront and get some sort of justice, some sort of outcome and law changes that will help this nation hopefully bring it to a better place in our policing systems. But this is why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important, and why understanding its origin story is so important, and understanding exactly what Black Lives Matter means rather than going for the response all lives matter, and how protesting will continue to work as long as persistence takes place, because we all know that once the persistence stops, then the change and the progress will begin to stagnate, and that's not what we need. Thank you.